So welcome everyone to week 7 of prayers and meditations by the Mother. So this week we have 2 prayers with us. One is a short one and the other one a bit longer. So let us start with the first one, January 12, 1914. And whoever is sharing first their reflections, it would be nice if one can read the prayer and then we go ahead and share our reflections.
May I, Dr. Monica? Namaste.
Yeah, namaste, sir. Please go ahead. Yeah, please.
January 12th, 1914. A teaching can be profitable only if it is perfectly sincere. That is, if it is lived while it is being given. And words often repeated, thoughts expressed frequently can no longer be sincere. What I have understood from this profound teaching is that whatever we are teaching to others, it can be profitable to the person to whom we are imparting this teaching only when we live as per that teaching. Whatever we are giving, we are living as per that. Only then it can be effective to the person to whom we are imparting. If simply it is mere words, which we generally repeat, but without having its, without really realizing what we are saying, then it is not sincere. It is not sincere if it is not being realized in our own life. Again, it comes to my mind about the adhikara. We were hearing about that story, Gayatri Mantra, the Rajguru who was working with the king. He wants 6 months of leave, and king asks him, why you need 6 months? He says that I want to realize now what mantra you want to realize. Gayatri Mantra, this is the Gayatri Mantra, why you need 6 months? So anyway, he wants that leave, and Raja gives that leave. And he tells him that once I am back after 6 months, I will let you know why I needed 6 months. Then after 6 months, when he returns, king asks him what exactly you learned. Now I got the adhikar actually of that mantra. Now how come? Can you prove that? So he, yes, I can prove how I got that adhikar. Then he calls the person and calls one of the guards and tells that please tie the king on a pillar. So king and the guard thought guard doesn't do anything, and king thought that the person has gone mad. But when king says the guard that please tie this fellow to the pillar, he has gone mad, the guard immediately follows. Which clearly, and then again he explained why he needed. So the Rajguru explains him how that the same kind of words have a different effect. When king says, he immediately agreed to do, but when Rajguru said the same words, he didn't do it. So that adhikar, this profound teaching about that adhikar bad, whether I have realized that truth. then only it can be sincere. Then only it can be effective for the person whom we are imparting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rashmi ji. Beautiful story. Yeah. Yes.
I will go, Monica, next.
Yes, Chitra ji, please.
Yeah. This is a very beautiful thing because a small experience, not a vision and all, just experience actually. A teaching can be profitable only if it is perfectly sincere, that is, if it is lived. Yeah. Recently, I started reading Synthesis of Yoga. Even I shared with you in one of the session also. So actually, I started attending one of the classes also from Divyanshi from Auroville. So it is going on. I am reading a chapter, Self-Consecration. It is so beautiful, Sri Aurobindo, how he brought out the human nature, the being, everything as it is. I mean, if you take a photograph, you can see the face clearly and all the features clearly, of a person. Like that, he brought out all the difficulties of human nature. Yeah, today morning only I was reading that again and again. I read and reread again. And after that, I used to actually contemplate upon this type of prayers when you send only at 3 o'clock in the evening. So I took this prayer. I really wondered how I felt like that. It is, if it is lived. So Sri Aurobindo brought out the real picture of a human being. I will read that paragraph actually. It is so true, Mother, how she wonderfully she said, only if it is lived and perfectly sincere. Yeah, that thing is there. I will read those para. Yeah. The most disconcreting discovery is to find that every part of us, intellect, will, sense, mind, nervous or desire self, the heart, the body has each, as it were, its own complex individuality and natural formation independent of the rest. It neither agrees with itself, nor with the others, nor with the representative ego, which is the shadow cast by some central and centralizing self on our superficial ignorance. We find that we are composed not of one, but many personalities, and each has its own demands and differing nature. Our being is a roughly constituted chaos into which we have to introduce the principle of a divine order. Moreover, we find that inwardly too, no less than outwardly, we are not alone in the world. The sharp separateness of our ego was no more than a strong imposition and delusion. We do not exist in ourselves. We do not really live apart in an inner privacy or solitude. Our mind is a receiving, developing, and modifying. Kindly note this. Our mind is a receiving, developing, and modifying machine into which there is being constantly passed from moment to moment, a ceaseless foreign flux, a streaming mass of disparate materials from above, from below, from outside. How he brought out, Sri Aurobindo brought out very clearly the picture of a human being. So when I read this and when I contemplate upon these lines again and again, and after that I read this prayer, how true it is actually. Mother said very beautifully, teaching can be profitable only if it is perfectly sincere. Yes, that is, if it is lived while it is being given. Yeah, I found it exactly the truth in this actually. And also next prayer also there comes that consecration. No, this chapter I read is self-consecration. It is a really wonderful experience for me today. Yeah, this is my sharing, Monica. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chitra ji. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Mm. Yeah, in 4 lines, it's really profound truth being revealed, especially in this one, the one which we are reflecting upon. Yeah. Yeah, anyone who wants to share next? Yes, Luba.
Jishnu here.
Okay, Jishnu. Please share. Yeah.
So these 4 lines when I read, I mean, first of all, as Dr. and Chitradi explained very beautifully, they brought very great insights. When I read, I felt that this is very profound. And see, everybody has explained the lines beautifully, so I'm not revisiting. It reminded me of what is happening in today's world. You know, when I read this, it is exactly because we see so many messages floating around in Facebook and other medias where something comes and people just share without contemplating, without understanding, without even thinking, and at times just for self-aggrandizing, they are sharing these messages. And it is not helping. Of course, we don't know what is the larger picture, but it is not helping people broadly. And it reminded me of one short incident. I was reading about one psychologist who was doing dream works. That is, he was um, analyzing his own dreams. And he is a big, important psychoanalyst, and he is analyzing his dreams. And he said, and this is quite back in 70s, he said that early in his career, he saw once in his dream that he is stealing newspapers. And he was thinking, what does this dream means? That I am not a thief, I am stealing newspaper. What does it mean? And he understood that in 70s it was different. So because there was no social media, he was exactly doing what is happening in today's world. He said that I was using information which I gathered from other people in society without understanding them. And he of course he argued for himself. He said, which means I am actually stealing this information. This information does not belongs to me. I am just using it without understanding. And in his own mirror, in his own subconscious mind, he saw that he is actually stealing this information. And what is stealing? Which means something which does not belong to you. And that is exactly what Mother is saying. If you are not practicing a truth, if you are not practicing a truth, actually you have no ownership over it. And it will neither benefit you, nor it will benefit others. So when I read these 4 lines, it reminded me of that incident. And I felt that these 4 lines are very, very profound for each one of us to reflect what is happening around us, as well as what we should do.
Yeah, thank you, Jishnu ji. So Luba would want to reflect or share anything?
I would like to add something.
Please, yeah.
From my side. Actually, when I was reading this prayer, what I remembered, it is how Sri Aurobindo describing influence of the guru or teaching or teacher in synthesis of yoga. And I wanted to read for everyone this very beautiful passage. So it is in chapter called 4.8 in Synthesis of Yoga. So where he describes 4 aids of sadhaka, which helps to him in his advance in yoga. So one of them is guru, teacher. And then he is writing the passage where he is describing what the influence of the guru would be as an integral teacher. Integral yoga teacher. And then he's saying influence is more important than example. Influence is not the outward authority of the teacher over his disciple, but the power of his contact, of his presence, of his nearness of his soul to the soul of another, influencing into it, even though in silence, that which he himself is and possesses. This is the supreme sign of the master. For the great master is much less a teacher than the presence pouring the divine consciousness and its constituting light and power and purity and bliss into all who are receptive around him. So that's what Mother is teaching. A true teaching is not something words and some kind of, things. It is something which is like a pure influence, which is pouring down around people or who is receptive to it. And I thought this is can add to what Mother is saying, that what is a true teacher or true teaching is. So it's a living example and presence pouring its divine consciousness. That's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for adding that. Yeah. Just the power of presence itself is enough. Yeah.
Today's share Windows presence. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah.
So anything from you, Shweta, if you want to add on or share anything more?
No, Monica, I'm just listening.
Okay.
Beautiful reflections.
Okay, great. So let us go ahead to the next prayer then. January 19, I think this was the one, if I'm not wrong. Yes, January 19, 1914. So whoever feels ready to share, one can first read the prayer and then we can share our reflection. Shweta, would you like to read the prayer if not wanting to share anything at the moment? Yeah.
Sure. I'll do that.
Great.
January 19th, 1914. O Lord, divine master of love, thou art the eternal victor, and those who become perfectly attuned to thee, those who live for thee alone and by thee alone, cannot but win all victories. For in thee is the supreme force, the force of complete disinterestedness, of perfect clear-sightedness, sovereign kindness. In thee, by thee, all is transfigured and glorified. In thee is found the key to all mysteries and all powers. But one can attain thee only if one no longer desires anything except to live in thee, serve thee, make thy divine work triumph more swiftly for the salvation of a greater number of men. O Lord, thou alone art real, and all else is an illusion. For when one lives in thee, one sees and understands all things. Nothing escapes thy perfect knowledge, but everything wears another appearance. For all is thou in essence, all being the fruit of thy work, of thy magnanimous intervention, and in the most sinister darkness thou couldst kindle a star. May our devotion grow ever deeper. May our consecration grow ever more perfect, and mayst thou already, the real sovereign of life, become in effect its true sovereign. Very beautiful.
Yeah.
Actually, this message is, this prayer is coming to me in different forms last so many days, and I really feel like, you know, so many illusions and wheels are like, just getting cleared, and as if a cobweb is getting cleared, and I feel there's so much to reflect on, and very beautiful. It's coming from every corner to me, this message. Thank you so much.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Great. So anyone who wants to share reflections on this prayer?
I feel now after reading this prayer also, connecting with reading of Sri Aurobindo's works and the mother's words. Yeah, it is. Personally, I feel I am addressing it towards Mother and Sri Aurobindo again. Actually, especially in the third paragraph, no? Yeah, thy perfect knowledge, everything wears another appearance, for all is thou in essence, all being the fruit of thy work, of thy magnanimous intervention. And in the most sincere darkness, thou couldst kindle a star. Yeah, this really, I mean, it is touching the heart, these lines actually. And also, may our devotion grow ever deeper, and may our consecration again grow ever more perfect. Yeah, these lines. And all the lines are very beautiful. Yes. As Sweta said, everything, yeah. This every time when we feel, I mean, something in us is pulling down, these lines are giving us really courage and hope again. Yeah, this is my reflection. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Chitraji. Very powerful lines. Yeah. Anyone who wants to go next?
Hi, Monica ji, Jishnu here.
Yes, Jishnuji, please share. Yeah.
So I will not go through the entire prayer, but some lines and some observations. We see here, Mother calls the Divine Master of Love. She is not saying the Supreme Being, someone. She is calling the Master of Love. And we know that Mother Sri Aurobindo has said that love is the ultimate transforming power. Mother has said, because of divine love, we all exist. Somebody asked, is there divine love, divine grace? Mother said, if there is no grace, if there is no divine love, this creation will not exist even for a second. And here Mother calls the Divine Master of Love. Then I would draw attention where Mother is saying, by addressing that the Supreme as the Master of Love, she is also saying that you are the eternal victor, and those who become perfectly attuned to thee, that is people who are listening. I mean, the divine is talking to each one of us, but we are not listening to them. But people who listen to you, those who live for you and only for you, the victory will be there. And why? Because the supreme force belongs to the divine. What are the force? The force of complete disinterestedness, of perfect clear-sightedness, of sovereign kindness. The moment we are disinterested, we do not have any preference. The moment we do not have any preference, we are strong. All preferences, attachments make us weak. The moment we are disinterested, and that is the second line, perfect clear-sightedness. The moment we are disinterested, we are able to judge clearly. We can judge others' problems more clearly than our own problems, because we take a dispassionate, disinterested view. And that Mother is saying that what is that force? That force of discrimination as in vichar or vivek, not the normal word, vichar and vivek, which the mind gives us as per Indian thought. That thought which comes from or that force which divine gives us of disinterestedness, which gives us the perfect clear-sightedness and of sovereign kindness, which I said, as Mother explained, without the divine grace, this world cannot exist. And it is through the divine that everything is transfigured and glorified. Where instead of going into these details of the paragraph, I will say, as in Upanishad, they said, that knowledge, by knowing what, you can know everything. And if we listen to Mother, when children are asking, or to Raman Maharshi, they are just saying one thing. Raman Maharshi is saying, find out who you are. And Mother is saying, find out your psychic being. Find out your psychic being, and it will tell you what to do. It will guide you what to do. Let it be your supreme guidance. And that is what here Mother is saying, through where Mother is saying that you find the friend in the divine. Somewhere else she has said, you find everything, but how to find? Here, that is in this paragraph, that wisdom is there, that in divine all the mysteries lies, all the answers that we are seeking for, all the glory that we are looking for is there. O thou art alone, thou art real, all else is an illusion. For when one lives in thee, one sees and understands all things. Nothing escapes thy perfect knowledge, but everything wears another's appearance. For all is thou in essence, all being the fruit of thy work, thy magnanimous intervention. And in the most sinister darkness, thou couldst kindle a star. Mother is saying, Sri Aurobindo said somewhere that, that if we say this universe is an emanation of the divine, Sri Aurobindo said, this universe is an emanation of the divine because it has been created by them. And in everything, in essence, the divine is there. It is there in the consciousness is there, he has spoken, in various levels of I would say activity. I mean, whether it is hidden in something, it is more active in some items. And that is what Mother is saying here, that in everything, in every object, in every aspect of life, you are there. I guess when one feels that sense of unity, which Mother must have felt, Mother and Sri Aurobindo has always said that if you feel unified in your heart, through there you find the unity in the world. You don't externally impose the unity through knowledge. You have to identify with the world in your heart. And once you feel, when you go inside your heart and you see, you touch the essence of your being, you understand that your essence and the world essence or the person in front of you, all the essence are the same. Ramakrishna Dev said that when he was in that state, he said, when I looked at everything, I saw as if Brahman has become this object, this cat, this person, this inanimate object. He is saying that it has become this object. And this last few lines I feel very beautiful. May our devotion grow ever deeper. May our consecration grow ever more perfect. And mayst thou, already the sovereign, the real sovereign of life, become in effect its true sovereign. So naturally, that is the ending of the prayer, where Mother is saying, let our devotion be more deeper, our consecration be ever perfect. And divine, who we all say, right, the divine is the master final. We understand he is the sovereign, but may we also realize and let him be manifested as the true sovereign of this life.
Thank you, Jishnuji. Any reflections from Luba? Do we want to add anything, share anything more?
No, I will listen now.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Rashmi, please, if you want to share anything more. Yeah.
Yeah, Jishnuji has covered really wonderfully many things. I will again just touch upon few things which I understand a little bit from this. Here the goal is given for us, and the key is also given, how to approach it. First, the goal is we have to live in the, we have to live for the, and we have to live by the Lord, for the Lord, in the Lord. That is the goal that is given. And the key that is given to us is we have to grow our devotion. The kind of consciousness I am in, I am not living in the Lord. I may be living for Him or trying to live for Him, maybe some of my actions when I'm completely consecrated, when I'm completely within myself, I'm living by him, but I'm not yet living in him. So the key that is given to me is I have to grow my devotion gradually, and I have to make my consecration more perfect. It's a wonderful sentence actually, because it is a gradual happening. Because as and when we go forward in the path, we see that my consecration is not complete. That is why I am getting the pain. I'm feeling the pain. When my consecration becomes perfect, goes towards perfection, then I may live in him, gradually live in him. Because he is our true master, he is our sovereign master. And another beautiful thing is that which Jishnuji clearly explained is the complete disinterestedness. When I have no preference in life, Ma says that if one no longer desires anything, sampurna nirasakta avastha, complete disinterestedness. If I get that, when I don't have any preference, I have clear sightedness of the path. And that makes me to live in him. That is what I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rashmi. Yeah. So, Chitraji, have you shared already on this prayer? I somehow can't recollect.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think it's already been shared so beautifully. You know, if I personally connected with my own experiences, I see that the most I have learned, I've only learned through my failures the most, you know, if I can call them failures, through desiring and through seeing the complication of desires, how it, Jishuji was pointing, how they make our preferences, they make us weaker. If I have not gone through that weakness, you know, I'm not convinced at this prayer at all, but having gone through that weakness of desiring and having the preference and wanting it to happen and then waiting for it to happen and not happening and then feeling weak in the knees as if the world is, you know, something less if what you want is not happening. I think that has been my biggest learning and growing in conviction that yes, this is the best possible way, this is the only possible way. So for me, I would say, you know, that here, you know, those who live for thee alone and by thee alone. Now I would not be able to relate, you know, why would I live for the divine if I have not seen the havoc of living for the ego, if I have not seen the havoc of living for the desires and for likes and preferences. Once I have been through that havoc, I think then the taste I get of this complete disinterestedness, turning only and only for all the support to the divine. And of course, the divine support comes in form of human beings, but then you're not directly coming, you know, asking a human being in the sense. So this force of complete disinterestedness, you know, I think this I can relate only when I have gone through the failures and the blunders of desiring, of having the likes and preferences, of feeling really, really weak when I follow those dictates of desires. And then only I see what a relief it is, to just stay focused on the divine and follow your life only for the divine. And then, you know, even in other human beings or other creatures or the whole of manifestation, one can see the face of divine. But I think for me, these learning experiences, through our own failures, through our own falling on the nose, I think they have been the biggest help, if I can say. I think here, yeah, in this line here it was shared, thou art real and all else is an illusion, because once we follow the desire, we see that we never really end up into a lasting contentment or fulfillment. It's only a temporary satisfaction that one may get, and then the struggle continues. So all else which we follow for completion is just an illusion. All else is an illusion. For when one lives in thee, one sees and understands all things, nothing escapes thy perfect knowledge, but everything wears another appearance. And here I could connect with how all the experiences of life, in Savitri, Sri Aurobindo says, our errors are his steps on the way. So how through our own errors, mistakes, follies, weaknesses, we learn to grow in our consciousness and learn to notice and know ourselves a bit more. If not for those failures, and if not for those falling on our nose, it doesn't, as if the fullness does not arrive. So I would say all this wounding and bleeding, to me it appears it has given me a lot of depth, in also understanding my own self, and in also relating with others, that it's easier said than done. What we were discussing in the previous prayer, that one may say very easily, but one may not really follow it. And then we say that silence is the biggest teaching, because once you see that everyone has their own course of life and journey and their own things to go on and learn through, then all that one can do is to be just present. What Luba was sharing earlier, the presence, the living presence itself is the biggest gift. How a flower, the presence of a flower, the presence of a little infant just does something to you. You may not even realize. It mostly is not the case with adults, but even adults who are individualized and, with the divine, their presence does make a difference. Yeah. And here, in the most sinister darkness, thou couldst kindle a star. Now, I can say that, through my own experiences, that yes, I have tasted that darkness, which can be really, really very sinister and almost on the verge of breaking. One can go, and yet one can see that in a moment of a shift, focusing on the divine, dwelling in the divine, focusing on the mother, one can actually see that little light coming out in that depth of darkness. So it's beautiful how this works. It's almost like a mystery and enigma, how it works, that one can create a hell and one can also be out of that hell in a second, again contemplating on the divine and giving your whole being to the divine again. So let me just see if there is anything more here. Yeah, and I think here also it comes to me that only if one no longer desires anything except to live in thee, serve thee, make thy divine triumph more swiftly. So I feel that again, that at one moment of time, there may be that you don't have any desires, because I am saying this because this has happened with me practically, that I have lived a life where most of the years, like it was a very disinterested life that I had been living. And although it was very peaceful, although it was very smooth, I can say, but I cannot say that there was much of progress. I cannot say that I had been through hells and could relate to other people's hells also. So having the desires for something other than the divine, which you never know when it strikes you, I think that has also given me hell, but it has also shown me the way out of hell. So when I talk to a person, when I'm talking to a person who is really depressed, who is maybe going through really deep, emotionally troubled times, now going through my own darknesses, I think it gives me a platform to relate with that person, that yes, I know it's not easy, but let's take our baby steps, because it's not easy when you are in that darkness. It's not easy. and one can just go anywhere, and that's why, you know, even suicides can be committed in that kind of a state where you feel so cut off from your own light, which is right there with you, but you cannot have any sense of that light. So I think having no longer desires, one can arrive at this state again and again, only when you have seen the havoc of your own desires. Only when you have seen the trouble and trauma of desiring anything else but the divine. There we get to realize that it actually doesn't work that way. You know, one only has to turn to the divine, because we don't know the larger picture. We don't know what we need. You know, because many a times I may think that yes, I need this person, I need this person, but I may not need that person in my life anymore, and slowly that person goes away from my life. So one has to come to terms, to acceptance with that maybe the divine wills this for me, and let me just accept this fully and live in that. uh, Even if it's pain for some time, just go through that pain, if that's what it, you know, is designed for me. So only then one can slowly desire nothing. You know, slowly one arrives at, you know, the last few lines: devotion growing ever deeper. If not for our blows in life, how would our devotion grow deeper? If not, if we got every satisfaction from our relationships and every contentment from our workplace and finances and everything, how would I turn to the divine? So I think these blows make us grow deeper in our consecration and devotion, and that only connects us more and more with humanity. It does not alienate us, it just connects us at a deeper level to our own being, and also to the rest of the humanity and other living beings and non-living beings. And I think Jishnuji already shared the last few lines beautifully, you know, that you are already the master, but as if I have you know, once I had written a blog where I had shared that as if we are a thief, and this thief has stolen a very precious watch. And although he has stolen this very precious and complicated watch, but he has no idea of its working at all, which function, which part of that watch belongs to which function. And almost it's a treasure gone wasted, because you have no idea what to do with that treasure, that beautiful watch. So it feels to me again and again that we again and again as if steal ourselves from the divine, thinking that we may do something beautiful with this, following our desires and likings and preferences. But slowly, with our own life experiences, we come to terms with the realization that the best way to utilize this life is to give it again and again back to the divine, because only the master, only the king knows the real use and the, you know, real utilization of this treasure that each of us are, you know, as human beings. So I think this has to be done again and again, because I have seen this happening with myself, that although we may say at one point of time that I may be consecrated, and in that moment one may be, but again and again something or the other may happen, and you take yourself away from the divine. Again and again something more attractive, something more bright happens, and we just as if steal ourselves away from the divine. And then the consecration has to happen again, yet again. Just a growing journey, as Rashmi ji was pointing out. This is just a continuing lifelong process, growing ever deeper. Yeah. So yeah, if any more reflections have come up or any insights to share, please.
Just a thought from my side. Maybe you know, we need to little bit ponder over this. It is a fact that the pains and the blows make our path shorter. That is for sure, because it is the shortcut to a deeper understanding, to enhance our devotion, to make our consecration more perfect. But the basic point I want to make, whether it is a necessity, whether it is a necessity to ask for pain or blow. Just I'm leaving it open for for all of
Yes.
whether it is a necessity, whether I should ask for it or how do I go about it.
Yeah.
Maybe you or Jishnuji can or any of
Yeah. I think mother shares that don't ask for blows. I've read a few words I remember, and there she says that you must go through pain in as much devotion, as much faith as possible, but one should not ask for pain and blows. But somehow because I was sharing my own personal reflections, that I have felt that although reading the words full of consciousness and illumination has helped me a lot, but when a real challenge strikes and you are just blinded by the challenge, to me, there has been no other option but to go through the pain. So that's what I was sharing, that I have gone through the pain, not asking for it, but maybe something in the nature had to be purified and had to be more and more clarified, and that's why maybe unconsciously one invites the pain or the suffering or whatever it may be, any challenge or difficulties. And that's how the learning grows, because maybe that's what's the way for you right then. But that does I personally did not mean that one should invite the blows and pains. I think mother also shares something on that, and if anyone wants to share, please go ahead.
Yeah,
Personally,
so yeah, Shweta, go ahead.
yeah. So I feel what is my understanding as of now, like the more and more I get into this path and I understand, and I surrender to the divine, and I also pray that help me to you work through me, like. So I feel the challenges do increase, and like Monica, you said, na, ki, the purification is happening. I think I feel like I am getting to know the darker sides in me, and it is all coming out. And how will it come out? It will be a blow or a pain that has to come out, and that is the path, because I feel like, yes, I prayed to God that I am surrendering, and like you start working through me, and then obviously this is how like I have to go through those small tiny small cracks and holes of darkness that are there. It is all coming out through different situations, challenges. And just couple of days ago I read this a small quote from mother, which says, "My child, I am the cause, the great creatrix from whom everything emanates. All that you can conceive of, it's created from me, by me, and for me it exists. Nothing is which is not in me. You understand? It will take you hundreds of births to understand who I am, and yet I reveal myself to my devotees who love me and still remain unseizable." I think it's a job of like lifetimes, but yeah, like if we talk about the pain and the blow, I feel it goes hand in hand in the way we surrender, and path path of purification. That is what is my understanding as of now. Like, long way to go. I can't. I can only understand this much with my little mind. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Shweta. Yes, Jishnuji, you wanted to share something?
Yeah, so what Rashmiji asked is very important. The question is, we should ask, what is pain, right? What is causing us pain? Failures cause us pain, right? And what are failures? Failures of whom? If we analyze, these failures are for whatever our vital demands which we had or desires which we had. Mother is saying the real failure is once you know that there is a psychic being and not realizing that psychic being. That is a failure of the soul. That is a failure of a human person. Sri Aurobindo has said failures are, if we are not aspiring for a higher life, that is a failure. But if we ask ourselves very dispassionately, what has caused us pain, if we look back in our lives, what has caused us pain is not because I was not able to realize psychic being. It was because maybe I was aiming for something, some name, some fame, some recognition, some money, some award, maybe something in Pondicherry, but not mother. Mother is always with me or with us, not only with me, with all of us. We are blind to her. That is not her problem. But we have had some vital desires. We have had some vital, or not only vital, even mental. Maybe I want to become a big writer. That is a mental thing. So mental ambition. And all these are, when these are not fulfilled, that caused us pain. True psychic pain is, which a bhakta has, that is when you are not able to have the connection with the divine. I was thinking one of these days that I am concerned that something has not happened at office, right? I am concerned that something has not happened at office. Am I equally concerned that I am not able to meditate? Am I equally concerned that I have not been able to realize the psychic being? Am I equally concerned that I do not have that inner connection with mother? No, which means that the real goal is not mother. Okay, there is a comfort, there is a satisfaction, there is some joy, but really my inner being is not connected to mother, or it is not loving mother how much it should be. But it is not causing me pain. It is not I am not considering it as a failure. I have no pain for it, right? I have pain if I am not promoted at office. And what is that? That is a vital gain. That is a vital thing. So, as Monica ji said, when these vital desires are not fulfilled, we go through a process of purification because we understand these are temporary things. Ultimately, what we understand, what is the process of purification? That these are all temporary or these are meaningless. At times, I can say you, the desires which you have, if fulfilled, may create bigger trouble. So once those are fulfilled or not fulfilled, we understand that these are all temporary. What we are seeking for or what we are made for are something deeper. Like Ramakrishna Dev said once, he said, how is this possible that today, this day passed and I did not have tears for the divine? He is having pain that day, that he did not have tears for the divine. He did not have that longing for the divine or aspiration for the divine. He said, today is such a dry day. I did not feel aspiration for the divine. And he is concerned. He is crying. He is telling his disciples how it's possible that one day passed without I had aspiration for the divine. But none of us are so much concerned. Okay. And second thing is, whether we should ask for not 100%, we do not ask because, and mother is also, naturally, mother is always in favor of harmony, not in favor of any extreme measures. But I will say, I have not read this directly in Mahabharata, but I have read about this story of Mahabharata, that after this Kurukshetra war was over, so basically the Pandavas' pain and troubles were over. So then Sri Krishna asked Kunti that what boon you want? And Kunti said, let the troubles in my life be never over. And Sri Krishna said, what are you saying? People say that let the trouble be over. She said, as long as we had troubles, you were with us. Oh Krishna, as long as we had troubles in our life, you were with us. Now that the trouble is over, you will put us in Hastinapur and you will go to Mathura or Vrindavan, wherever you belong. You will go there and you will keep us in Hastinapur and you will go. I don't want that. I want to be with you. So let troubles be there. So 100%, we should, to come back to Rashmiji's question, we should not ask for pain, but we should understand what is the real goal of life, and analyze ourselves where we stand, because that is very important.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Jishnuji.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Very
it
nice.
is very beautiful. Yeah. Very beautiful.
I think there is also one couplet, or maybe it was Rahim Das ji who said that, keep on giving me keep on giving me pain or dukh, because that's how I remember you. Yeah, so there is a whole canto on problem of pain in Savitri also. One can go through it, beautiful lines of Savitri. So it's something not that really very, we actually, the way we are, as Jishnuji was pointing, the way we are, we somehow, there is a necessity of pain, that's the term used in Savitri, to straighten ourselves, to purify ourselves. Somehow,
It is a hammer of the god to chisel men out.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So one must go through those lines in Savitri, those of us who are interested, or maybe many of us may have already gone through, but one can go through over it again and again to understand the necessity of pain and what it does to us, how strongly it makes us connect with the divine somehow, the way we are right now. Yeah, beautiful. So yeah, anything more, anyone? Okay. Yeah, mother also shares that there is this kind of almost an intensity that happens when one goes through any pain or suffering. And mother says that one must use this intensity to go further, deeper, dig deeper in our being. Because this intensity is usually not available to us in our ordinary state of consciousness, since the consciousness is not that concentrated and mostly dispersed, scattered here and there. Jishnuji was pointing out, I want this, maybe something is in office is not working, and so we are dispersed in our consciousness. But if I am right now given a absolute illness, maybe a life threatening illness, the whole of consciousness becomes concentrated. So pain and suffering does have an effect on our consciousness as it is right now, because it's a dispersed and scattered consciousness mostly. So it does the task of collecting the consciousness together. And then mother says that if you really want to use it for your growth, you can use that intensity of the pain and suffering so that you go deeper and deeper in the being and unite with your inner light or the psychic being. So that can be done very easily in the challenging times, because our consciousness is not slacky and dispersed. It's very collected and concentrated. Yeah. It's mysterious the ways it works. Yeah. Okay. So if not anything more, I think we can end it here then. Thank you everyone for sharing and reading and reflecting together. Yeah. Thank you for joining.
Thank
Thank you.
Eva. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.